Some good news on a $1,400 fourth stimulus check specifically focused on the low-income and fixed-income beneficiaries of Social Security, retirement, disability, SSDI, survivors, SSI, VA, and RRB. I have all the details and what you need to know right here in this video, so let's get right into it. All right, so as of recently, there's been a lot of increased talk and support for a highly focused fourth stimulus check for the low-income and those millions of beneficiaries I just mentioned a few seconds ago, all because of this massive inflation data report that we just received a few days ago. Well, those individuals who are currently coming out and showing their support as well as advocating for a highly focused fourth stimulus check are simply saying that Americans who once had any kind of savings around has simply been eroded as a result of this massive inflation. Well, they continued on to say that those individuals living on a small fixed income are less likely to have any kind of savings around, and if they did, it's all gone because of, once again, all of this massive inflation. Therefore, they're pointing toward additional stimulus checks to come out that are highly focused on the low income and fixed income to help everybody throughout this ongoing time that we're going through with massive inflation going on. Well, there's a lot more about this that I want to share with you right here in the video, so let's get right into this. However, really fast before we do, if you're new here or if you haven't done so yet, please make sure to subscribe by hitting that button right down below the video, as I'm doing research all day, every single day, as your one and only daily advocate, bringing it all back into these short videos so that you can stay posted with what's actually going on right now and what is really being mentioned as it pertains to money, benefits, checks, stimulus, raises, reform, legislation, and anything else that may be coming up right here that's going to impact you or your monthly benefit. Of course, I want you to know about it right away, which is why I'm back for you a couple times each and every day with these videos so that you can stay posted with what is actually going on. So again, thanks so much for joining me. Please make sure to subscribe down below if you haven't done so yet, and let's get right into the rest of this update. All right, so there's a lot of really good information that's coming out right now in regards to all this. So here's what happened. The inflation data was just released a few days ago. Well, it's huge, right? It's coming out massively, massively high. And people are simply saying, enough is enough already. We need to do something, especially for the Americans who have limited savings or virtually no savings to lean back on, as in the low income and the fixed income, because these individuals are most vulnerable right now because there's no savings to lean back on. Fixed income simply isn't going anywhere, as in your income is staying stagnant. Meanwhile, prices continue to go away. Therefore, it is leading toward major financial issues for a lot of people going forward. So there's a lot of different things that have been popped up here recently, and I think this is kind of interesting. Here's what it comes down to. So there's been a lot of different reports coming out about this, and I want to lay out some of the details about this because it's actually pretty interesting, and they're building a pretty strong case right now. So here's what it comes down to. Over the last 2 years, all the other stimulus checks that were sent out, the 3 other stimulus checks, those stimulus checks alone have lifted and kept 11 million people out of poverty. So if those stimulus checks would not have happened, 11 million more people would have fallen into poverty as a result of that. Well, these reports and the people that are coming out talking about this are simply saying, if we don't send out another check coming out here soon, we're going to have millions of people falling into poverty because we've seen here over the last 2 years, 11 million people were prevented from falling into poverty as a result of these checks, and we can see the power behind them. Now, they also go on in other reports to show that these small state stimulus checks that are being sent out, if you've been watching the videos for any length of time here on the channel, you've been hearing me talk about this. There's many different states out there right now. There's like 20 different states, possibly even more than that. I don't know what the real number is right now, but there's a lot of different states that are either in the process of sending out state-issued stimulus checks, or they're in the process of getting them passed, and or they've already floated the idea of state stimulus checks to be sent out. Well, here's what they're saying, that these state stimulus checks are going to have a very minor inflationary impact going forward because it's reaching such a small group of people collectively across the entire country, right? Just like I've been saying in so many other videos here, I've been giving examples about this, saying if they have a highly focused stimulus check, as in it doesn't go out to 282 million people or 85% of the population like all the other 3 checks did, if they actually do have a highly focused check and send it out to maybe 50 million people or less, the inflationary impact is going to be very minimal. It's not going to be anywhere near what all of these other checks have done as far as inflation, which, by the way, they said by the end of 2021, just the stimulus checks alone have accounted for 3% of the inflation that we're currently dealing with. Well, what I'd like to know then is, what about the other 5%, right? Or even more, what about the other 5.5% of the inflation? Where's that coming from? Well, here's what's interesting about it as well. The reports continue to go on to show that out of the $6 trillion that was printed over the last 2 years, 14.1% of that money was sent out in the form of stimulus checks. So you can see basically an eighth of the money, a little bit more than an eighth of the money, was sent out in the form of stimulus checks. So a very small percentage of the money that was actually printed and sent out was stimulus checks. About $850 billion of the total money out of the $6 trillion was actually stimulus checks, about 14.1%. So we can see here, it's not the stimulus checks to blame for all of this inflation that we're currently dealing with. Maybe a little bit, maybe a couple percentage points, but for the most part, all this inflation that we're currently dealing with, for the most part, doesn't really have a whole lot to do with the stimulus checks. It's about all the other money that was printed and sent out as a result of the PPP for small businesses, the unemployment benefits that were sent out, the boosts that were sent out, all the money that was pumped into businesses. How would all the billions of dollars that they just gave away to all the states, the $350 billion to the states? I mean, seriously, there's a lot of other reasons why all this money and all the inflation is actually happening right now versus stimulus checks. That's not the real reason. If we look at the actual numbers and the statistics and the percentages behind this, we can easily see that the stimulus checks only accounted for a very small percentage, 14.1% of the total money that was printed and sent out over the last 2 years, right? Well, here's what else is interesting and that I've also come across while doing this research. Some of the reports are actually pointing back toward 2009. Do you remember what happened back in 2009? Let me tell you, in May of 2009, a $250 check was sent out specifically focused on the low income and the fixed income. All of these fixed income beneficiaries that I mentioned at the beginning of the video got a $250 check back in May of 2009. Why? Were we dealing with COVID then? No. Were we dealing with other, global situations going on? Not necessarily. All we were dealing with was an economy that was collapsing, and the low income and the fixed income were having a hard time. Therefore, they issued a $250 highly focused check in May of 2009 that went out. Do you remember this? Yeah, it happened. It was a real thing. Look it up if you don't believe me. Anyway, my point behind all this is, if they happen to send out and if they did approve a highly focused $1,400 check, a $2,000 check, something like this, focused on maybe 50 million people. Realistically, it wouldn't even need to be 50 million people. It'd realistically probably be more like 40 to 45 million people. This would not cost all that much money, and realistically, the inflationary impacts would be very minimal compared to what all the other stimulus and all the other money actually did over the last 2 years. $6 trillion went out the door. 14% of it went out in the form of stimulus checks. You can kind of see here, it's not the checks that are doing it. It's all the other money that has gone out, right? So there's a lot of other kind of issues that are going on right now. But here's what's interesting. As this inflation data continues to come out month over month, highly above 8%. So we've been above 8% inflation for several months now. Every report that comes out like this, it's just building the case further and further and further, even stronger for more stimulus checks that are highly focused. Let me throw this out there as well. Now, some of you have asked down in the comment section, what's your honest opinion on a stimulus check? Let me tell you this much. When it comes down to a broad stimulus check going out to 85% of the population like the last 3 checks did, and 282 million people, I don't believe it's happening. No, there's no way that's going to happen. However, I could foresee, yes, absolutely 100%, I do foresee another check going out to highly focused on the low income and the fixed income. So what are the parameters around that? I don't have a clue. I don't know that, but I could see a highly focused check being sent out, just like what we saw in May of 2009 for those fixed income beneficiaries because of everything going on right now. Here's the thing. I continue to see this in report after report after report, literally every single day. The low income and the fixed income are struggling, are having a really hard time right now. Incomes are staying the same. Incomes are stagnant. They're not moving. And inflation is literally getting away from people. So as a result of that, some of the other reports right now are showing that the average household is spending an extra $460 every single month just to maintain the same living kind of standards that we once were just a few months ago. Well, get this. the average household who is maybe receiving fixed income benefits cannot necessarily spend an extra $460 because that would account for probably 50% of your benefit, possibly even more than that. Well, as a result of that, if you can't spend more because there's not more money to spend, that means you got to cut back by $460 a month, right? Well, you can only cut back so much. So this is getting to the point here where there's intervention that must need to happen, right? They can't go on like this forever. So pointing the finger forever is what their classic move is right now. It can't be done anymore. It simply will not happen forever. They cannot continue to do this because pointing the finger solutions is not a solution. It's just an excuse. Well, eventually they need to come up with a better excuse than just, pointing the finger at everybody else. It is something that they need to figure out, as in Congress, the administration, and the president. They need to do something about this. They need to figure it out, and they need to do something especially for the low income. So anyway, some interesting reports that have been coming out lately, and a lot of interesting points bringing up here too, just like citing back to 2009 and the $250 check that went out in May of that year, specifically focused on the low income. So this would certainly not be the first time that they've done this before, and they could easily do it. They already have everybody's information. Not a hard thing to do, right? Just gather the information from Social Security, send it over to the Treasury and IRS, and then boom, send out the payments. Super easy stuff. Possibly the easiest amount of payments that they could send out to anybody, right? It'd be super easy. Anyway, as I do get more details on this or any more information, of course, I'll be right back here for you breaking it all down. So please make sure to subscribe down below if you haven't done so yet. Share the video with your friends, family, social media, and I will continue to do anything I possibly can within my power or authority, which isn't really much, but I'm going to continue doing whatever I can to get additional money for those of you in this community. I see the comments down below. The struggle is very, very real right now, and something's got to be done about this. Anyway, I'm here for you in any way that I possibly can be. Please make sure to subscribe down below. If you haven't done so, share the video and go back and check out some of the other thousands of videos here on the channel. Please enjoy your day. Until next time, remember, I'm here for you, your one and only daily advocate, right by your side. That's my commitment and my dedication to you. So please enjoy your day, and I'll catch you again later in the